Welcome. Today we're undertaking an exploration of one of Canada's most enduring and profoundly tragic unsolved cases. We're going to set aside the sensationalism to conduct a really thorough analysis of the evidence and the mysteries surrounding the 2008 murder of Lindsay Buziak.
This is a case that has, I think, rightfully captivated and frustrated investigators for, well, over 16 years now. Our purpose here is to meticulously look at the facts that we have from the source material. We'll focus on the timeline, the forensic challenges, and, the various theories that have been developed and often dismissed over time.
Absolutely. And at the heart of this analysis is Lindsay Elizabeth Buziak, born in 1983. At the time she was killed, she was just 24 years old.
So young.
Incredibly. She was an ambitious and, by all accounts, highly respected real estate agent in the Victoria area of British Columbia. Every source confirms she was popular, dedicated, a really caring young woman who was just focused on building a successful life.
And it's that professional ambition that was, well, it was exploited. It was weaponized against her. The facts of the case center on February 2nd, 2008, when Lindsay was deliberately lured to a property viewing in Saanich.
And the people who did this, they posed as clients, wealthy, motivated clients.
Exactly. Claiming to have $1 million budget, an urgent need to buy. What makes this so chilling is just the level of planning involved. They meticulously ensured that the murder would happen in the total isolation of an empty home.
That planning is really the crux of our discussion today. We need to go beyond just the summary and really explore the details of that lure, the precision of the crime, and the subsequent almost total lack of any physical evidence.
Sure.
We'll explore all the information provided to grasp the timeline, the hurdles police faced, and the theories that have been raised.
It's a study in contradiction, really. An act of devastating personal violence that was executed with the cold, calculated efficiency of an organized operation.
Okay, let's start with that initial contact, because the execution of this crime really began weeks before the actual event. This wasn't a crime of opportunity.
Not at all. It was a targeted, calculated setup.
It required foresight and a lot of logistical discipline.
And it was entirely specific to Lindsay. The sequence started in late January of 2008. Lindsay gets a phone call from a woman. She's claiming that she and her partner urgently need to buy a home, and she drops this budget of $1 million.
A setup designed to be pretty much irresistible to any agent, especially a young, ambitious one.
Of course. But the sophistication of the lure was, well, it was immediately undercut by details that caused Lindsay a lot of alarm. She was unnerved from the start.
And there are two details that really stand out in the sources. First, the woman used a foreign accent, an accent that Lindsay later confided to her father she thought might be fake.
And she gave a name that was, of course, later confirmed by authorities to be completely fictitious.
Then there's the second detail, and this is maybe the most important one when you start thinking about the motive.
The personal cell phone number.
Exactly, the breach of professional protocol. Lindsay was a junior agent. She wasn't some high-profile name in the market yet. But this caller somehow got her personal cell number. They bypassed her office line completely.
That detail alone suggests inside knowledge, or at least access to her private information. It's a huge red flag.
A massive one. The caller had this flimsy explanation, claiming a previous client had shared the number. But Lindsay was rightly concerned about that. She saw it as highly suspicious.
And she didn't keep those concerns to herself, which is crucial. She talked about it. She discussed the strange, urgent nature of the call with her father, Jeff Buziak, and also with her boyfriend, Jason Zalo.
So this put her in a really difficult spot professionally, right? On one hand, she's ambitious. This is a potential $1 million sale. The commission on that alone would be a huge career achievement for her.
And Jason Zalo, who worked in his family's real estate business, he encouraged her. He emphasized that financial potential.
But he also tried to calm her fears.
He did. He offered a clear measure of reassurance. He promised he would drive to the viewing and wait outside in his car. Just be there.
And that gesture, that promise, it's a key piece of information that sets up the events of February 2nd.
It does. So she had this mixture of professional excitement, but also this deep personal apprehension leading up to the appointment. It was set for 5:30 p.m. Saturday, February 2nd, 2008, at a property she found on D'Souza Place.
Before we get into the timeline of that day, we should probably touch on the context of the key people here, particularly the Zalo family.
Right. Lindsay was ambitious, but her relationship with Jason Zalo connected her to a very powerful, very wealthy family. They ran a prominent, successful real estate business in the area.
And that context is important because, as we'll get into, the family's connections, their business associates, they inevitably became a focus for investigators.
It seems like from the moment that phone rang, she was pulled into a situation where the person on the other end already had an incredible amount of information about her life.
Whether it was professional or personal?
Exactly. It indicates this entire process was highly individualized. They didn't just target an agent, they targeted Lindsay Buziak specifically.
Which is a key element that continually brings investigators back to this idea of a personal motive, not a random one. So let's move into the day of the murder. The timeline here isn't just precise, it's rigidly documented. Every single minute played a role.
Yeah, the day started normally enough. Lindsay and Jason Zalo had a late lunch together. The sources even give us the exact time they paid the bill. 4 p.m., just over an hour before the appointment.
And then they separated, took their own cars. Lindsay probably went home to get changed for the viewing. Zalo, meanwhile, he headed to an auto repair shop to pick up a colleague.
And crucially, the sources note that he was running late for that pickup.
That delay is paramount, isn't it?
It is, because we have definitive time-stamped CCTV footage from that auto shop. It proves Zalo was leaving with his colleague at exactly 5:30 p.m.
The precise moment the viewing was scheduled to begin.
Exactly. It places him definitively across town at the exact second the viewing started. It immediately establishes a hard alibi for him.
And he was delayed. They were texting back and forth, so Lindsay would have known he wasn't there yet.
Correct.
Let's look at the location. Number 1702, D'Souza Place in Saanich. This is key geographical context. It's a small cul-de-sac. Limited parking, only 4 houses.
But the specific property, the one Buziak chose or, maybe was steered toward, it was strategically placed. It's at the outer end of the cul-de-sac.
And its back garden fence ran parallel to a main busy street.
Torquay Drive. And this layout, it effectively created a natural, low-visibility escape route away from the tight confines of the cul-de-sac and directly onto a major road.
The caller had implied she was coming alone. But when Lindsay got there, 2 people were waiting for her, a man and a woman.
And this is where the witness sightings are so important. At about 5:30 p.m., 2 witnesses saw a couple walking up that cul-de-sac.
And they gave specific descriptions.
Very specific. The man was a 6-foot-tall white man with dark hair. The woman, blonde-haired, estimated to be between 35 and 45. And a very distinctive detail. The woman was wearing a distinctively patterned dress.
Something investigators would have really latched onto.
For sure. And their interactions are equally significant. The witnesses noted Lindsay greeted the couple, shook their hands, in a way that clearly showed this was a first-time meeting.
No familiarity at all. The lure had worked.
It had. Then they all entered the house together.
Now Zalo enters the scene. He and his colleague arrive at D'Souza Place shortly after 5:40, probably around 5:40 p.m. He said he saw a figure moving through the mottled glass of the front door.
He parked his car, he waited for about 10 minutes, and then, in a decision that tragically played right into the killer's hands, he drove away to wait on another street nearby.
And his explanation was pretty straightforward, right? He said he didn't want to be a nosy, interfering boyfriend. He wanted to give her space.
It's a completely understandable human impulse to give a colleague space during a business meeting. But in the context of this timeline, that pause, that 10 minutes of driving away is just critical.
It bought the killers an additional window of time.
An enormous one. It allowed them to proceed without the stress of Zalo sitting right there watching the front door.
So after waiting another 10 minutes on that other street, Zalo texted Lindsay, asked if she was okay.
And that message was never opened.
Never read.
So we've got roughly 20 minutes from the time Zalo first arrived to this point. He drives immediately back to the property. He tries the front door, finds it locked.
And through that obscured glass, he could see her shoes in the entry hall, suggesting she had, settled in. But there was no movement, no response to his knocking.
This is where the panic sets in, and he dials 911.
While Zalo is on the phone with the emergency operator at the locked front door, his colleague starts looking around the outside of the house.
And the colleague finds a gap in the back garden fence, a pre-existing gap wide enough to slip through. And he notices the back patio door is wide open.
So he calls out to Zalo.
Right. Zalo's still on the phone with 911. He immediately tells the operator they're going in through the back, and then, crucially, he ends the call.
His colleague goes in, runs through the house, and unlocks the front door for Zalo.
And Zalo runs upstairs and finds Lindsay dead in the master bedroom.
It's an incredibly tight, frantic timeline. The police had to reconstruct all of their movements minute by minute.
And they used not only the 911 call logs, but that CCTV alibi to confirm that Zalo and his colleague only arrived after the murder had occurred. That they were reacting to a horrifying scene, not participating in it.
The sheer speed of the murder is just highlighted by this timeline. The suspects had to get in, isolate Lindsay, attack her, and then try to make their escape all within that tiny 10 to 20-minute window.
Between 5:30 and Zayler's final return to the house, it's astonishingly fast.
The moment emergency services arrived, the picture of the crime became, well, it was clear in its brutality, but just utterly opaque in its investigative potential. Lindsay Buziak was pronounced dead at the scene.
Stabbed multiple times.
Yeah. And the crime scene analysis itself offers some of the most chilling insights into the nature of the attack.
Crucially, there were no defensive wounds. None.
What does that tell us?
It's overwhelming evidence that Lindsay likely had no warning. It suggests she was targeted in a sudden, overwhelming attack, most likely from behind. It just speaks to the cold efficiency of the execution.
And this is where that contradiction really begins. You have this act of extreme intimate violence. Multiple stabbings suggest rage, intense personal motivation. But the logistics were clinically clean.
Nothing was stolen. It wasn't a robbery. She wasn't sexually assaulted. The sole intent was clearly murder.
As is standard procedure, Zalo and his colleague were taken into custody.
I questioned extensively, but the timestamp surveillance footage, the 911 calls, their verified movements, it all ensured they were quickly released without charge.
And the sources confirmed Zalo has maintained complete cooperation with authorities for years, including passing a polygraph test. The investigation pretty quickly cemented its focus on that mysterious couple.
And the mystery only deepened because of what was missing from the crime scene. The killers left behind no usable DNA, no fingerprints, virtually no physical evidence that could link back to them.
That's extraordinary, especially given the brutality of the attack. In a violent, close-quarter stabbing, the probability of transferring some kind of biological material, a hair, a microscopic blood spatter, a skin cell, it's extremely high.
So what does it tell you when a scene is completely sterile?
It tells you they planned for it.
It leads to the investigators' conclusion that the murder was well organized and executed by people who had killed before. It doesn't necessarily mean they were professional hitmen, but it suggests they were highly organized and took extreme precautions. Operational security.
The implication is that they likely wore disposable clothing, used gloves, maybe even took steps to clean up before they left. That takes time and confidence to do that in a strange house.
It speaks to the premeditation. It extended even into the execution phase. And that sterile scene, it supports the police's primary theory about the escape route.
Right. They believe that when Jason Zalo first arrived at 5:40, the killers were just about to walk out the front door.
But Zalo's arrival at that cul-de-sac forced a last-second tactical shift.
A pivot.
Precisely. They suddenly pivoted, fled through the back patio door, which is why it was found wide open, slipped through that gap in the garden fence, and made a dash for a getaway vehicle.
And that vehicle was highly likely waiting on the busy Torquay Drive.
Which avoids the visibility and the potential bottleneck of that small cul-de-sac.
And this theory is strongly supported by those witness accounts we talked about. The witnesses saw the man and woman walking up the cul-de-sac,
implying they didn't park there. By parking on the main road, they minimized the chances of their vehicle being identified or even recalled by neighbors.
The meticulousness is truly chilling. They planned the perfect location, the house at the end of the cul-de-sac with the strategic back exit, and the perfect timing. End of the day, low visibility, clean escape route.
That lack of forensics is the ultimate testament to their preparation.
So if the crime scene itself told investigators almost nothing concrete about who did this, they had to pivot entirely to the only trail that was left behind.
The electronic breadcrumbs of the lure itself?
The cell phone used to contact Lindsay Buziak is, it's arguably the single greatest piece of physical evidence in this entire investigation.
And yet it yielded no direct links to the suspects. It's a frustrating piece of evidence.
Let's follow this burner phone trail because it's meticulous. The phone was purchased in Vancouver several months before the murder.
And the absolute key detail here is that the phone was never used, not once, for any purpose at all until that initial contact with Lindsay began in late January.
So it was purchased, stored, and then activated only when the operation was ready to go.
It was activated under the fake name Paulo Rodriguez. Authorities quickly figured out this identity was fictitious, completely disconnected from the real world.
And the phone was registered to a legitimate business address in Vancouver.
But investigators believe that business had no connection. The address was simply chosen at random to provide this this superficial veneer of legitimacy.
This level of operational security, it just speaks volumes about the planning.
Yeah.
They weren't just using a burner phone. They were making sure that everything associated with that phone, the name, the address, the usage history, was untraceable.
And the cell tower data confirmed the logistical scope of the plan. The phone was tracked traveling on the ferry from Vancouver, presumably with the suspects, the day before the murder.
Which confirms they traveled specifically to Saanich for this purpose.
And then immediately after the murder, the phone was deactivated. It has never pinged a tower again.
So it confirms the police's firm belief that the phone existed solely for the purpose of the murder. It was a disposable tool in a highly planned operation.
Designed to be used once and then destroyed, leaving no electronic trail.
But that electronic trail got even more complicated in 2020. Later investigative documents were released to the public, and they revealed something new.
Something previously undisclosed. Authorities were actually aware of 2 separate phones used by the suspects.
This is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, much more concerning regarding the complexity of the plot. So, we know about the Vancouver number used to call Lindsay. What about the second phone?
The second phone was used for a single, crucial purpose: to check the voicemail of the first primary phone.
Wait, a second phone just to check the voicemail of the first one?
Exactly. This secondary layer of communication, which itself was likely another burner, it suggests an extreme level of paranoia or maybe internal coordination.
Why would they need a separate phone just to check voicemail if the man and woman were together?
Yeah.
If they were planning this together, they would be in direct contact, or they could just use the phone themselves.
That's the analytical puzzle this new fact presents. It suggests a few possibilities. First, maybe the communication wasn't between the man and the woman, but between the killers and some kind of external handler.
An unknown party organizing the operation remotely.
Or second, it suggests a profound distrust or extreme security consciousness where even checking the primary lure phone's voicemail had to be compartmentalized using another disposable resource.
This moves the plot from a simple 2-person operation to something much more complex, a potentially hierarchical structure.
It confirms the entire operation was designed to ensure that if the primary phone was ever traced, the secondary communication link would still be protected. It just emphasizes how professional the planning was.
So moving on from that digital trail, investigators, of course, had to examine Lindsay's real-world connections, and that brings them to the Zalo family, given the strange location of the murder.
The fact that the murder happened on D'Souza Court it's not random.
No. D'Souza Court is named after Joe D'Souza, a major local developer. And D'Souza happened to be a friend and business associate of Jason's mother, Shirley Zalo.
The fact that the murder happened on a street with this specific localized connection was highly suspicious to investigators.
And the sources confirm that D'Souza himself was supervising construction work near that location about an hour before the murder took place.
So this proximity of known associates to the chosen murder location, it necessitated a very thorough, very difficult investigation into the Zalo network, their business, their relationships.
The public is naturally curious about that connection. And this location detail, it strongly suggests the killer had access to inside local knowledge, not just picking a random empty house.
However, we have to reiterate the formal stance of the police. After an extensive investigation, no one in the Zalo family is considered a suspect in Lindsay's murder. That connection was explored and ultimately cleared.
So the focus then broadened to other possibilities, specifically the theory that this could have been related to organized crime.
The drug cartel theory. This gained a lot of prominence in 2010 after a Dateline episode covered the case.
And it stemmed from the fact that in December 2007, just weeks before her murder, Lindsay had tried to contact a friend of her ex-boyfriend.
Right, while she was visiting Calgary. And that specific friend was arrested in January 2008 in what was, at the time, the largest drug bust in Alberta's history. He was accused of being a major drug trafficker.
So the resulting speculation was explosive. Was Lindsay somehow involved? Was she believed to be a police informant leading to a contract killing ordered by a cartel?
This was a pathway investigators quickly ruled out. They conclusively determined Lindsay was not an informant. She had no known involvement in drug use or trafficking.
And veteran homicide investigators, crime scene analysts, they rejected the idea that this was a clean professional hit.
And this brings us back again to that conflict between the logistics and the execution. If you look at the expert opinions of Dwayne Stanton and Yolanda McClary, they both agreed the murder was, quote, brutal but too amateurish for a contracted cartel hit.
Meaning what exactly?
Well, a truly professional hired killer typically prioritizes efficiency, anonymity. It's a quick, clean method, often a single gunshot executed in a way that avoids unnecessary, messy violence, unless the violence itself is meant to be a deliberate message.
And the multiple stab wounds didn't fit that profile.
No. The frenzied nature of it suggested an intense, highly personal motive, driven by rage or desperation or some kind of intimate grudge. That doesn't align with the cold methodology of a detached, hired killer.
So the police were ultimately left with this conclusion that this was a highly personal murder, planned by someone close enough to Lindsay to know her schedules, get her private number, and lure her to a perfect spot.
But executed with a level of rage that betrayed the operational discipline they saw in the planning phase.
Despite the focused investigation, a number of unsettling, unresolved claims have just continually hovered around this case, keeping speculation alive. One of the strangest involves a claim made by Lindsay's close friend Nikki later in 2008.
Nikki claims she received a mysterious late-night phone call from an unknown number, and she recalled the female caller had a strange, unplaceable accent.
A detail that immediately ties back to Lindsay's description of the client's accent, which she thought might be faked.
Exactly. And the story takes an immediate turn toward that complex network around the victim. Nikki, disturbed by the call, called the number back repeatedly. The sources say 20 or 30 times.
Until eventually, Shirley Zalo, Jason's mother, answered the phone.
And when Nikki demanded to know why Shirley Zalo had called her, Shirley offered an explanation. She claimed she had intended to call her secretary, who was also named Nikki.
And she presumed Jason must have accidentally added the friend's number to her contact list, which led to the misdial.
Now, here's the crucial ambiguity. Shirley Zalo vehemently denies this ever happened. She denies making the call, denies having that conversation.
And has never been publicly confirmed whether authorities were able to definitively investigate Nikki's claim or verify the origin of that strange call.
It just creates this investigative dead end. It's rooted in conflicting testimony about a piece of anecdotal yet highly suggestive evidence. In a case already filled with contradictions, this only added to the public suspicion.
The police investigation, however, continued to rely on verifiable documents, some of which only came out years later. The 2020 public records release revealed previously unpublished information that brought a new dimension to the case.
Lindsay's digital footprint.
Yes, the documents revealed that police discovered unusual internet activity associated with Lindsay before her murder.
And this immediately opens up a new avenue of inquiry. What constitutes unusual activity? It could be anything. Researching properties, looking up ferry schedules, or maybe even researching the identities of people associated with her or Zalo.
And what caught investigators' attention even more was that authorities initially suspected that violent criminals who were on her Facebook friends list may have played a role in the murder.
That is a staggering implication. It shifts the potential motive away from professional rivalry or organized crime and into her social or online network. Did the killers leverage an online connection? Was she researching them?
These are questions that demand deeper focus, even if the public details remain scant. It suggests investigators spent significant time exploring her digital periphery, not just her immediate physical environment.
And all through this, the relentless efforts of Lindsay's father, Jeff Buziak, have been just instrumental in keeping this case alive. He maintains a website dedicated to his daughter's memory, seeking leads.
But this public platform also led to a deeply disturbing event in 2017. In August of that year, a comment was posted on his website, a direct, chilling taunt from someone claiming responsibility.
It read, "I killed Lindsay Sick and stupid cops will never prove it."
Just an act of deliberate cruelty. Whether it was the actual killer or some cruel opportunist, a message like that is meant to demoralize the family and undermine public confidence.
And it forces authorities to expend resources investigating a claim that may be purely malicious but simply can't be ignored.
But the persistence of Jeff Buziak, who leads an annual commemorative walk every February, continues to pay dividends in keeping public and official focus on the case.
And that persistence, combined with advancing technology, it seems to be generating progress. In February 2021, the Sonic Police made a significant announcement.
They said advancements in DNA analysis and other forensic technology had created new leads. And furthermore, the FBI has now formally joined the investigation.
The inclusion of the FBI and that reference to DNA analysis is a powerful signal. It suggests that investigators may have recovered microscopic DNA or trace evidence that was previously deemed unusable.
For a case that was defined by its sterile crime scene, that development represents a massive shift. Renewed hope for resolution.
It does. And as we study this particular case, it's important to place it in context with other similar tragedies. Lindsay Buziak's murder is often chillingly compared to the case of Susie Lamplugh.
A British estate agent who disappeared in 1986 in London. She went missing during a scheduled property viewing with an unknown client.
The parallel is tragic because in Lamplough's case, no trace of her body was ever found. And the identity of the client who lured her remains completely unknown. These cases highlight the inherent occupational hazard faced by real estate professionals.
Meeting unknown clients in isolated, unoccupied locations.
Hmm. The Lamplugh case led to major overhauls in safety protocols for agents. The fact that a similar meticulously planned lure and murder could occur decades later in Sonnet just underscores the continuing vulnerability within that profession.
This exploration of the source material confirms that we are dealing with a highly personal murder, orchestrated with astounding logistical sophistication.
The killers relied on a false identity, they used disposable resources like burner phones, and they engineered a quick, clean escape route designed to leave zero physical trace.
And the central, enduring conflict of this case remains that contradiction between the organization and the brutality.
On one side, you have professional, almost paranoid planning. Burner phones purchased months in advance, the use of two separate phones for coordination, the complete absence of forensics. This all speaks to advanced operational security.
But that calculated planning led to an act of extreme personal violence. The multiple, frenzied stab wounds, the lack of defensive wounds. That suggests not a cold, detached killing for money, but one driven by intense, overwhelming rage.
Carried out by someone who knew Lindsay well enough to access her private information and exploit her professional vulnerability.
This conflict, the logistical genius meeting the intimate, brutal rage, is precisely what has made the case so notoriously difficult to crack. It suggests a perpetrator, or perpetrators, who can compartmentalize violent emotion with extraordinary operational discipline.
It's a terrifying mix.
And if we return to that key 2020 revelation, the knowledge that investigators were aware of two phones, including a secondary phone used solely to check the voicemail of the primary lure phone, that detail still raises profound questions. We asked what this reveals about the complexity of the relationship between the man and woman, but let's take it a step further.
Okay.
Given the extraordinary steps taken to minimize risk at every single point, what does this secondary layer of communication reveal about their fear? Was the need for two phones a sign of their confidence, knowing they had redundant systems? Or was it a sign of paralyzing paranoia, driven by the intense personal motive that ultimately fueled the brutal, sloppy execution of the crime itself? That is the ultimate investigative question this meticulous planning leaves for you to consider.
A fascinating and deeply troubling question that continues to drive the search for answers.
Thank you for joining us for this in-depth exploration of the facts surrounding this tragic case.
We acknowledge the immense difficulty of this topic and the ongoing pain and determination of Lindsay's family, particularly her father, Jeff Buziak, in their long quest for justice.
Thanks for listening.